But this is my second take of the video, actually, because I realized I had more to say than I thought. So in class, we were talking about if someone's life is more meaningful than someone else's. And that ended up being a long conversation for my group because I kind of disagreed with the people in my group were saying. So we talked about it a lot. They essentially came down to saying that impacting other people in life, like impact is different than meaning to your life. Whereas to me, it was so tied. I was like, your life isn't as meaningful if you didn't impact others. But then they were saying how like if you have a baby who died and then like an 80-year-old person who had touched many people's lives, like whose life is more meaningful. But to me, I was like, you can't, that's not a right example. That's not exactly meaning of life, like meaningful life. They both have the right to life and they're both worth the same opportunity to life, but who, and like, yes, God loves them and their meaning to God is the same, but like an actual meaningful life to me has to mean like an impact or something more. And so that got me to the reading of C.S. Lewis, how he it was saying that like a mole must dig for the glory of God. And he says how like we're all, he quotes the Bible saying how like we're all members of one body with many parts. So, because in my like human perspective, I think that like some lives are more meaningful than others. Like if you have someone who, if you were to say like cured cancer versus someone who just lived alone in the woods in a cabin and didn't impact people, like to me, they have different, their life, one person's life is more meaningful than the other. But I guess that's just a human viewpoint, because if you're not actually doing impact that is everlasting, like eternal of God, then it's not the same. It's not like worth it. And so even though it's like, to me, I was thinking one person's life is more meaningful than another's, then it's like you're brought back to that passage that says we're all members with different parts, and so we're all going to do different things, but you have to do it all to the glory of God. So then I guess you're all the same meaningfulness, but it's just hard because I have like a human viewpoint, whereas God views it differently, I know. And it makes me think though, at like the end of, I always think about when I go to heaven, like God will say like, well done, my good and faithful servant. Like I always think of like, what am I doing? And like there's all like the verse that says faith without works is dead. So it's like, if God didn't want you to do good works, which then to me like adds meaning to a life, then like he wouldn't have said that. So clearly a life that does good, more like good works is meaningful. I don't know, it gets so complicated back and forth, but it makes me think of how like for me my major is sign language interpreting, but to me there wasn't enough meaning in that. So that's, I'm still doing it, but it's not what I actually plan to keep doing long term, I guess. Because I do know, like, I am making an impact in the person's life that I'm interpreting for, but it's not enough to me. There's not enough meaning to it. I want to work with, like, kids who have been abused, because I've had experience with them working at a camp. And to me, there's just more meaning in it and more impact to make my life more meaningful, which is interesting because this C.S. Lewis passage, he's giving this talk to a college, like to students who are during a war, and so they're trying to see how their lives are meaningful when they're just being students and there's people dying for their country. So it kind of makes me think along the same lines of like, what am I doing right now? Like I think of that while I'm at school. What am I doing now that has meaning while I'm just a student? And then there's another article that says, the Aristotle one, about happy work is best done by the man who takes his long-term plans somewhat lightly and works from them moment to moment as for the Lord, on page 127. And so I guess I just end with that you're going to be happier and life is going to be more meaningful if you're working for the Lord and you don't have to think so long-term all the time, but just life is fleeting, so live each moment for God.